In this video, we're breaking down natal moon in Aries or moon in the first house. This could also apply to people that have maybe Mars right on top of their moon in conjunction in the natal chart. The thing that makes an Aries moon person distinct from an Aries sun person or someone that otherwise has a lot of dominant Aries energy in their chart in areas besides the moon comes from understanding the unique symbolism and meaning of the moon and how it plays out in an individual's personality. The sun is more conscious, ego-directed, more of the intentional energy in life. It's taking everything that we receive in the external world, it's modulating things inside us, modulating our instincts, how we were raised, our values, and shaping it all, and then there's an output. And that's why sun sign it's very observable. It's very reliable in terms of talking about main characteristics of people. Even though it doesn't tell the whole story, it's always going to be relevant to someone's sun sign interpretation. Moon is, it's more receptive. It is where the sun is a source of light, the moon is not inherently a source of light. It's a recipient of light. And so the moon is instinctual and private personality, but it also represents that drive in us to feel safe and accepted and at home and how we feel nurtured. And so moon energy, it is our instinctual energy, but the instincts, they have been molded by the people, the big people in our lives, the big experiences of our lives. And I think this is an important thing to call out, especially when talking about moon in Aries, because Aries, it sits on the first house. It's the most inherently selfish sign. It is about personal will and individuality and assertion. And so the biggest thing I will say is that an Aries sun, they're much more observably selfish, not necessarily in a bad way, but observably selfish, independent, a little bit more uncompromising than an Aries moon. Sometimes, I think one thing people will observe or experience in their initial interactions with an Aries moon is that Aries moon, they put in a lot of work in order to find connections with people and to build rapport. In some ways, a little bit of a contradiction. It's that Aries energy that's funneled into finding ways to feel safe and to feel belonging. It's that warlike spirit to create that safety. And sometimes we feel safety when we connect with people or we can build emotional connections, even surface level ones when we first meet people. Aries moon, it's a very dynamic moon position. These people, they have an inner need to be extroverted once in a while. They want to go out. They want to explore. They want to find the fun and novelty in life. That's why on initial impressions or initial interactions with an Aries moon, sometimes you can get into one of those modes where it feels like the Aries moon person is just so into you. They have like a laser beam focus on their interactions, and that can feel really good. Like people generally really love being around Aries moons, and you sometimes have those situations, maybe at a casual party and you're trying to meet people where you get locked in with a conversation with an Aries moon and it just lasts so long, and then you kind of lose track of time and you're like, what happened? Sometimes though, what can happen is the person on the other end can be like, hey, can I have your number? I think we're gonna get married. This is love at first sight or something. And the Aries moon person is just like, all right, see you later, see you never. And they just go on to the next one. And yet, while they do sometimes almost have a Libra-like tendency to want to make people like them, or again, to find that connection, they usually are ultimately direct about how they're feeling. They're not necessarily hiding the ball. They feel aversion from things they don't like, things they have an instinctual reaction to. They express it. These are literally the children of the Zodiac. And I don't say that like pejoratively. They're the children of the Zodiac in the best way possible, because being around someone with an Aries moon, their emotions are spontaneous. There's not a lot of brooding. There's not a lot of guarding or protecting. It's very spontaneous expression. So when they're happy, they laugh. When they're excited, they get like so excited about something. They enjoy simple things. Like they love games, they love competition, they love playfulness, all these things. And it's so nice, especially if you come across an Aries moon, even in a professional setting, they like can loosen up the mood. They like make everyone feel just a little bit more fun and at ease. They're like, hey, let's, you're at a work event. They're like, hey, let's get another drink and go play skee ball. And other people are like, I don't know, I'm in a suit. Maybe we shouldn't do that. And they're like, screw it. And they go and do it, and they like totally change the vibe. That's why we love them. In the context of romantic relationships, Aries moons can make tremendous partners. And Aries moon is a very sensitive moon sign. When things bother them or hurt their feelings, like you're gonna see it. They can sometimes be reduced to tears very quickly. In some ways, their sensitivity in the moon position, it's almost reminiscent of water moons. They are very sensitive and impressionable. They're always feeling what's going on. They always can sense when something's going on. I would say they're not as intuitive as a moon sign, where they don't quite have they can't explain it, or they don't always know why something is off, or they don't know why a person did it. But if someone's energy is changed, someone is upset, or there's some kind of vibe and they're not talking about it, like an Aries moon will sense it. They'll know something's up. You have to understand about an Aries moon is that they will really enjoy their emotional connections with all the different people in their life. It's never going to be a moon sign that, like Scorpio wants like emotional commitment, or sees sometimes having emotional connections with different people as like emotional infidelity. That's not to say they aren't loyal. This isn't a loyal position, or like they're not capable of being emotionally loyal to one person. Like they definitely very much are, but that emotional loyalty to them just means having a closer relationship to the significant other. It doesn't mean like cutting off all these other relationships they have. So they might have good friends at work who they're really close to of different sexes, and they enjoy that. It's not inherently a threat to anything else, but they're not going to see a need to cut themselves off from that just because like it makes someone uncomfortable, which is, within reason, that's a very healthy approach. Those are just their boundaries. Again, emotional infidelity, emotional unreliability, in the context of an Aries moon, that's not something inherent to this position. It depends on the maturity level of the individual, depends on the rest of the chart. I will say though that Aries moons, they can get very caught up, and goes back to having those kind of laser beam moments or connections with people. Like sometimes they can be the partner that goes to a party with their significant other and they get separated, and then the partner sees the Aries moon person like in this huge conversation. They've been talking to the same guy for a while, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Again, you got to figure out the boundaries of your own relationship, but it's kind of like the dynamic. It's a little bit like a kid or a child. Imagine trying to explain that to a kid. Like a kid is just like going where they're having fun, and they're always going to go back home with the person they love, but they're gonna have fun wherever fun's going on. I think the real challenge for an Aries moon is that the Aries kind of selfishness or like subjectivity does sometimes come out again in the perception of their emotions, or how they end up defining them or describing them or putting words or meaning to them. Because an Aries moon, they're sensitive, they feel a lot. However, where there comes to be emotional conflict or emotional difference of opinion, Aries moons can sometimes be wrong. I mean, we can all be wrong, but not wrong. They can be very subjective. When an Aries moon is really feeling something strongly, it's very hard for them to, without disregarding it, just momentarily stepping out and really empathizing with or totally seeing it from the other person's perspective. In situations of emotional conflict, it's almost this moment of self-preservation or survival for the Aries moon person. It can be competitive or a competition. It turns into almost like war. You see the Mars come out. And this can be really challenging for other people. It can also be challenging for an Aries moon because they feel a lot of stuff sometimes. And when it gets really intense and it bubbles over, they're not always capable of understanding it. And that's why it's really important, just like with Scorpio moon, very important for this moon position, this person to have healthy outlets, like physical outlets, journaling, other cathartic ways to release energy, because when emotions are bottled up and they boil over, it can be a little bit not fun to deal with. And going back to these situations of emotional conflict, sometimes it can be really hard for an Aries moon to hear or feel or be exposed to another person's feelings without an Aries moon in some way making it about them. It's hard for them to, again, separate that. And so in situations where a person is expressing something that really hurt them, that maybe an Aries moon person did, instead of just really trying to hear it and feel it and be empathetic to it, an Aries moon sees it as like, oh, I'm sorry that I made you feel this way. Like it's hard for them to think about it without also thinking about what they did and either defending themselves or protecting themselves, or else conversely feeling so bad and guilty about hurting the other person that they're still they're still only focused on them feeling bad about what they did. They're still focused on them when the other person is asking just for an empathy or an understanding or an expression of understanding of how the other person felt, how it made them feel. And so that can be anywhere from like mildly annoying to really upsetting in the context of big conflicts. And this is something that Aries moon, it's not like a scarlet, it's not something that's permanent. They can get better at it, but it's never totally going to be their strong suit. Aries moons out there, feel free to critique this or respond. I don't know what your experience is, but there's always going to be a little bit of that tension. And so the gift of being around Aries moons is that they are your ultimate champion. They are your cheerleader. They get excited with you. They're fun and energetic, and they feel so much love, and they can give love, and they do it in very bold and direct ways. The challenge is that in moments of tension or emotional turmoil, it's almost like they become this totally different person. They go from being your best friend to being like your worst enemy. And when you are maybe at an extreme low point, when you kind of want them to be the best, the most emotionally empathetic, they've become like a warrior, your worst enemy, and they can get mean or just very self-protective. All moon signs have their great qualities and their super bad ones. I don't want this to come across as like I'm roasting on Aries moon. It's just that's the nature of this placement. This can be worked with, and it can actually bring a lot of growth in a relationship when it's worked with. And the best way to do it, again, is learning how to communicate in the right ways. And someone that's really not good at speaking or talking about tough emotional issues in a calm way or in a way that doesn't blame other people. So like saying, I feel this, this is what I feel, versus like, you did this, and it made me this. Like that you talk, that accusatory stuff really doesn't go well with Aries moons. It doesn't really go well with anyone, but that's going to bring out some of the worst parts of it. They're going to get very self-protective. Also, generally, and this is helpful for anyone, but bringing emotional issues in a calm way. So not in the moment of the heat, sometimes it's inevitable, but if possible, later when you're calm, so that you're calm, their energy can line up with that a little bit better. It's not so inflammatory, because when Aries moon gets in a fight, they're going to pick up arms and they're going to fight back, and they'll probably fight back better than you. And sometimes things feel worse after a fight than the issue came in to start with. In terms of how to support and love and nurture your Aries moon or your Aries moon friend or partner or family member, is giving them space and room to breathe and explore. So never try and control them or box them in too much, because again, Aries moon, it needs to, like a kid, they need to have freedom to go outside out of the house to explore. They can have like a curfew, they can come back, but let them go out, let them have a life, let them experience novelty, let them go roam. They really need that. They need to explore. So having excessive, unreasonable boundaries or rules, I mean, that just alone sounds a little bit like weird and controlling, but especially for an Aries moon, not going to work. You never want to make an Aries moon person feel trapped. So having intense, tough conversations, you don't want to do them when you're in trapped places like car rides, or when you're both stuck like in a guest room at your friend's or your in-laws' house, like when there's no place to take space, or starting fights in like public or whatever. Like if an Aries moon feels trapped and they have to express something, but then they can't really, also not great. The great thing about Aries moon is that sometimes they're not always able to articulate back your emotions in the way that you always want, but I mean, they are just such a loving sign. They don't hold grudges. There's an innocence. They want to see the best in people. They see the best. They try to see the best in you. And that can be really, really awesome. They want to emotionally challenge themselves. It's the agrarian nature of Mars, the planting and the growing and the reaping. They want to go through that process of continuing to assert themselves and accomplish, to conquer, again, emotionally. So that's a great trait for any person. They're forward-looking. They're focused on the present. They don't hold grudges per se. I think the last thing I'll say is that a certain amount of sparring or tension or polarity is something that is really important for an Aries moon, and is important. They have those kind of things in their life or in partnerships or relationships where there's a healthy kind of teasing or challenging. They have ways to be competitive with people around them in fun ways, like, even board games, or like playing ping pong, or doing those kind of things where they can get out that aggressive, again, competitive spirit, but it's all fun. They want to tease you a little bit. They want to flirt in that way. They want to create that polarity and that tension. And so that's something that you should be okay with, also like promote and encourage and participate in. And while they are a very sensitive sign, they feel a lot. They're tapped into a lot of emotions and the emotions of the environment around them. They don't necessarily want to always dive so deep into them. That's a little bit the nature of fire energy, fire moon signs. They might just completely break down crying, or maybe it's the opposite. And for a water moon, that might happen, and then they want to break it down or dissect it or understand it, or really go down deep into the subconscious and unpack it. And what is the source of it? An Aries moon, sometimes maybe they just feel it and they don't want to talk about it. Certainly they don't want to talk about it for hours, or dive into the subconscious or unpack everything. Sometimes they just want to move on. And you could be around an Aries moon person, they'll be upset and they don't let you in, or they don't want to talk about it. They can be more guarded in that way. And it's not just, they're not letting you in or they're not trusting you. Sometimes going down deep in the depth is not something they really value or something they've built a skill in, and so they don't do it for themselves. They do better by experiencing emotions and feeling them when they need to, and then moving on. And if you drag them down, or you want them to, and this is especially true for water signs or water moons, if you want them to go that deep or unpack everything or be that kind of way, it's not really going to work. Give your Aries moon person, or if you're an Aries moon person yourself, give yourself a lot of attention, give yourself a lot of love. They don't want to be ignored. They don't want to be talked down to. Think about how you would interact with a child. Even though they don't always understand or not so bogged down in adult minutia, they're very present and they're very direct, and they want to be happy. They want to do the things they want. They don't want to do the things they don't want. So kind of understand that. There's a beautiful innocence and a really refreshing energy about that. Sometimes it can be frustrating in other ways because there's sometimes a lack of self-awareness or an immaturity, but again, that's all part of the experience. All right, that's enough for now. Hope you enjoyed this, and talk to y'all soon.